Hello! Welcome to Pint of a Story with me, Shobit. In this podcast, we bring you pint-sized stories from indie authors such as myself that you are likely not to have read before. Links to where the stories live on the internet will be in the show notes or description, and we do encourage you to click on them and read the stories for yourself. Hope you enjoyed today's story, and if you do, please share it around and subscribe if you like.
Tales of grandeur, immoral and pure, greed and secrets, passion and glory. The pulse is rising, the plot's surprising, you're captivated, that's the point of the story.
Yes, that is the Pint of a Story, and this week we are back with a story provided for by our collaborators. It is called An Unnamed Terror, written by Shireen Shahab and first published in January 2021 on penmancy.com. Penmancy.com is a website we deeply care about as they share the same passion as us, which is to provide indie stories a platform to reach as many people as possible. To read this story and many more, please visit penmancy.com. Your feedback or comments really do matter, so please leave some. And hope you like this one. Here goes. Harini wiped the beads of sweat pooling on her forehead with the back of her hand and stared at the slowly expanding stain on the front of her blouse with dismay. Working in the fields was a back-breaking job. The repetition involved in the cutting of wheat stalks had lulled her thoughts, fingers automatically grasping the stems and cutting through them like a hot knife goes through butter. But she had somehow missed the feed time of her baby. Guilt tinged the overwhelming feeling of love that coursed through her at the thought of her baby. Why didn't the child cry? Harini wondered as she put down the sickle in her hand and ambled towards the tree where she had left her 4-month-old baby hanging in a makeshift hammock made from one of her old saris. Recently widowed, she had resumed fieldwork around a month back. Since there was no one who could look after her baby, she had been forced to bring him to the field when she had resumed work. Her worried gaze alighted on the hammock lying forlorn on the ground from afar. A chill ran through her body. She sprinted to the tree as quick as a gazelle, with her heart hammering with fear. The scene she laid her eyes on made her blood turn cold. The sari hung shredded, the tears long and violent, one end of the sari still tied to the tree. Her baby was nowhere to be seen. The ground under the tree was hard as wood, and dry leaves scattered around in soft little heaps. The possibility of tracks being left behind by the attacker was non-existent. Only a small bloodstain upon the ground stared at her like a silent, sinister announcement. A sob escaped her lips, burst white with terror. She ran helter-skelter looking for her baby. The 3-month-old can't even crawl. Where has he gone? Who has taken him? Her efforts in vain, she raised an alarm and soon her neighbors gathered around her. Search parties were organized, and after a couple of hours, deep inside the forest, the bloody remains of the unfortunate baby's outfit were found on a lantana bush. Nothing else could be determined of his fate, but everyone agreed that it was better not to hope. Harini was devastated. To have lost her kid so soon after her husband was a double blow fate had subjected her to. She fell to the ground as merciful blackness overwhelmed her grief-racked body. A large crowd had gathered at the house of the village chieftain, but the air of festivity and cheer associated with such large gatherings was missing. The faces were long and the voices subdued. Everyone looked at the district collector, who had asked the people to be gathered there. I am telling you, it is evil spirits who have targeted the village. 12 kids in 3 months? It is a witch, I am sure, who goes around kidnapping kids, murmured Nonima, a dark-skinned and wrinkled woman, old and bowed. She was the self-appointed conscience of the village, and didn't hesitate in calling a spade, being incorrect more often than not. Probably it is some gang of thieves who specialize in kids. They probably sell the kids for their organs, opined a young man, not wanting to appear superstitious, though secretly he didn't believe his own theory. 3 months had passed since the first ill-fated disappearance. More had followed. Always small kids. Always no sign of the kidnappers. The sign of struggle could be traced to the forest, but once inside the forest, the kidnappers and the kids had disappeared into thin air. Only some bloodstains were left to indicate that some foul activity had taken place. The simple villagers had no idea who to go to. Terror had engulfed the villagers, who felt like pickles dipped in oil. The horror of the disappearances covered them like some invisible mist, viscous and pungent. The people stopped doing their daily activities alone. Fear could be smelt among the rows of the grain fields, emanating from the silent workers who now refused to step out without someone else in tow. The kids had been admonished to either stay at home or to step out in groups. But kids and precautions do not go hand in hand, and the disappearances had continued. Finally, the hapless villagers begged the village chieftain to do something. He contacted the district officials, and the result was the gathering called by the district collector, who had come to the chieftain's house to discuss what could be done. We have a problem here, the deep baritone commanded attention, and the whispering and murmuring of the crowd ceased. I believe many of you are of the opinion that some supernatural agency is behind these disappearances. For my part, I don't believe in such tales. However, no strangers have been seen and reported in the area in the last 3 months, so we need to find out who exactly is behind these kidnappings and deaths. We will call a couple of expert forest rangers who can track the land better and make it give up its secrets, something which we haven't been able to do. We will also have more armed patrolling in the area to keep an eye on things and deter the criminal elements from further violence. The crowd dispersed, muttering their dissatisfaction. The bent old woman kept mumbling to herself. Harini stopped and asked her, "What are you still harping about? Don't you think the measures are enough?" The woman smiled at her coyly. You shouldn't be ready to believe what all these government people come and spout at us to fool us. Which forest ranger can go against evil when it has decided to rear its head? I've some idea who's the culprit behind all this. Saying this, she looked at Harini archly, with venom in her eyes. Harini shuddered at the hostility emanating from the hag. The old woman continued. We need some holy man to come and carry out a ritual for driving out the evil. I know just a man. He is a pundit of great prowess. He had rid the village where my sister lives of one such similar spirit, a young witch who first devoured her own husband and child and then turned her attention to the kids of the village. With his vast scriptural knowledge, he successfully chased her out of the village. We need him to do the same here. As the old woman finished, she once again looked Harini up and down, raking her with her eyes. The import of her words wasn't lost on Harini. She uttered a silent prayer up to the gods to send a swift end to these disappearances. Otherwise, it would be the end of her stay in the village, maybe even her life. The next week saw the arrival of 2 forest rangers. Both were lean, tall, and muscular, with shiny oiled hair and crisp, waxed mustaches. So similar as to pass for brothers, but the similarity stopped there. Narayan Rao was easygoing and talkative, whereas Bhaskaran was quiet and serious. They went around the village asking questions related to the kids' disappearances, but they dropped no inkling of their plans to solve the mystery. In stark contrast was Pandit Umashankar, who arrived on the heels of the two forest rangers. Loud and voluble, he spent no time in gathering the villagers and announcing his plans of driving away the evil spirit. Short, plump, and portly, he commanded everyone's attention with his booming baritone nonetheless. "The village has been cursed by a vicious, vindictive spirit. It has suffered injustices in the past by your ancestors, and plans to eke out her vengeance by killing the children of this village. This will require a potent ritual to be offered to the gods. Hopefully the spirit will then leave the village." With this, he had dictated a long list of items varying in their cost from expensive to very expensive, and much which had no obvious link to the ritual. For the proceedings, which were to be carried out for 3 days and required the presence of married women and pious personalities from the village. The two rangers knocked on Harini's little thatched hut towards the end of the afternoon and the day before the ritual. Harini had just returned from the fields. She opened the door, fresh from her bath, droplets of water clinging to her shining, dusky skin, and found the eyes of the two rangers exploring her lean, supple body with insolence. But while there was hunger in Narayan's eyes, Bhaskaran had the warmth and understanding in them too. She politely asked them their purpose for coming. "Yours was the first kid that was taken. From the reports we gathered, the search for him was also the one which went deepest into the forest. We would like you to show us where the remains of his dress were found. We are told you remember the way well," Narayan said, his manner supercilious. "Only if you feel up to it. Being the mother can be distressing for you. If you don't want to, we will understand," Bhaskaran added in his quiet way. I will do anything I can to help catch the ones who took my child away from me. I know the way well. When shall we get ready?" Harini was determined to help. She had another reason, which she didn't want to tell anyone else. The ritual required the presence of married women, and she didn't want to be reminded of her widowed status. The ridicule by the married women preening about their own luck and deriding her about her cruel handling by fate was too much to bear. They agreed to leave right after sunrise, and a little breakfast she would provide. An area was cleared in the center of the village the next morning. A tent was erected, and a small altar with the sacrificial fire was soon spreading the aroma of the various spices and herbs that the Pandit put into it for propitiating the spirits. The people stood in a crowd around the fire, expectant and excited, as if the spirit would be drawn from the fire just as a magician draws a rabbit out of his hat. Initially, the small children stood there quietly, mesmerized along with their parents. But a few kids found that soon the gentle murmurings dulled their senses of danger. They decided to go pick a few succulent ripe guavas from the orchard near the fields, but inside the village. The elders were busy in the proceedings, and no one was going to scold or hold them back. They felt comforted in their numbers and knew nothing would happen to them if they were quick. Ratan, the adventurous progeny of the chieftain, was the leader of the band in deference to his father's position. 6 of them, softly slinking away to the orchard, escaped the notice of the elders, enamored and engrossed with the chantings of the Pandit. The ritual continued undisturbed. Sometime later, the air, heavy with incense and smoke, was rent with the cries of the kids. The elders, hypnotized with the swirling chants and repeated actions, found it hard to break the enchantment, but the cries of the innocent kids pierced and intoxicated minds finally. "It was a demon who took him," said one kid, shivering and crying, incoherent with fear. "It was a hound from hell," added another kid, white and pale. "It had red eyes, glowing like embers from Mars' coal stove," added another one helpfully. "It bounced and took Ratan between its massive fangs and disappeared right in front of our eyes." Pandemonium broke around the altar. The crowd finally extracted the details from the kids, whose words were so jumbled up with fear and confusion that it was difficult to separate fact from fiction. What could be established was that something, an animal, black and large, had taken Ratan into the forest. Praise be to the Lord! The Pandit has succeeded in luring the evil spirit into the open, exclaimed Nonima, but no one was there waiting to listen to her. A team soon formed with the chieftain at its head, which went towards the jungle to find out what fate this little boy had met. The mob, armed with sticks and whatever agricultural equipment could be used as a weapon, reached the guava orchard. Tracking the broken down and bent grass and vegetation, they soon reached the edge of the forest, from where it wasn't easy to follow the signs of struggle the young boy had evidently put up. They hesitated, like a breath held up in anticipation, undecided as to the course of action to be further followed. Suddenly, there was movement inside the forest. 3 people soon came into view, one of them carrying a little boy in his arms. His moans could be heard above the whispered mutterings of the crowd. The crowd collectively relaxed. The Sarpanch ran ahead and took the boy in his arms. "He's alive! He's alive!" The relief was palpable in his voice. "I will forever be indebted to you two. You have saved him and earned my lifelong gratitude." He looked up to the face of the 2 rangers and found Harini too, standing a few paces behind, next to a makeshift sled. Something lay on it, covered by tarpaulin, flies buzzing around it excitedly. Nonima, who had come up to them, spat angrily and said, "Haven't I always said she is involved in these disappearances? Here she is, caught like a thief by these 2 great officers. She's the one who has been stealing kids, no doubt." Before anyone else could say something, Bhaskaran spoke up. His voice was low, but still everyone stopped talking to hear what he had to say. "It was thanks to Harini that we were in this area when the animal snatched the kid. This brave woman agreed to lead us to the place her kid disappeared, even though it must have hurt her terribly. And it was only by God's grace that the wolf decided to snatch the kid today. A less courageous woman would have quailed at the sight of the kid dangling from the bloody mouth of a wolf as big as this one. But she never flinched or cried out to give away our position we had taken on hearing the boy's cries. Once the wolf appeared, it was easy to take it down. Hopefully your days of terror are at an end." Admonished, Nonima shuffled to the back of the crowd. A voice piped up. "So it was a wolf taking our kids away?" "No, not one. There was a whole family living deep in the forest. We have tracked them and will call for reinforcement to catch them. The male, though, was the most dangerous. We've no idea why they took to human flesh, but they seem to have been enjoying it. It is better to have them shifted somewhere they cannot cause more killings," Narayan Rao explained in detail. The 2 were as good as their word. Reinforcements arrived within a couple of days, and the rest of the wolf family was caught and taken away in a special vehicle. The Pandit, who staunchly claimed the success of his endeavors, was dispatched with suitable remuneration. The people breathed a sigh of relief as the long reign of terror was finally over and life limped back to normalcy. The age-old debate between logic and faith continued. Some felt grateful for the logical measures taken by the district collector, which ended in satisfactory results. Some continued in their belief that it was the ritual that had resulted in the wolves coming out into the open. But all agreed to the fact that the 2 rangers had done an admirable job. When it was time for the 2 to leave, Bhaskaran went and knocked on Harini's door once again. "Our purpose of staying here has come to an end, but I want to know if you would like to make a new beginning with me," he asked diffidently. Harini nodded. It was time her trials were over. A new life and a better future awaited her, and she wasn't going to let go of the opportunity. So, we hope you liked that story enough to tempt you to subscribe. We encourage you to share it with anyone else you can think of that would like to hear our stories as well. But do not forget, it is the writers that make the stories, so please read them for yourself by clicking the link in the description. That'll mean the world to us. Thank you for your time, and we hope to see you with our next. In the meantime, remember, if you can't find what you're looking for, create it. Take care.